Today I will be telling you the tale of Tun Jana Khatib from Sulalat al-Salatin or the Sejarah Melayu. Come join me. Hi, my name is Heidi. I'm a Malaysian author and welcome back. Today I'm very excited because we will be starting a special trilogy of episodes on the Sejarah Melayu. For the next 3 weeks, we will be doing a deep dive into the Sejarah Melayu or the Sulalat al-Salatin. We will look at why and how this book was conceived, its provenance, what it is about, and who wrote it. I'm excited to tell you the first story today, so sit back, relax, chill while I tell you the tale of Tun Jana Khatib. Once upon a time, there was a merchant and ulama, a missionary called Tun Jana Khatib, who sailed from the country of Pasai to Temasek, or what is now known as Singapura or Singapore. One day, Tun Jana Khatib found himself walking outside the gates of the palace, and as he walked, he was being observed by the queen, the Permaisuri, and her ladies. Tun Jana Khatib passed an areca palm tree, stopped by it and looked at it for a while, and out of nowhere, the tree sort of like split in two, and this shocked the queen. Unfortunately for Tun Jana Khatib, this incident was witnessed by the king, the Sri Paduka Maharaja, and he was enraged because he thought Tun Jana Khatib was showing off his skills. He thought he was flirting with his wife. So the king immediately ordered the execution of Tun Jana Khatib. He was dragged to the place where the people were executed, which was actually next to a cake seller's stall, a bikang cake seller. Tun Jana Khatib said he was innocent, that he wasn't doing anything wrong, but the king ordered him to be stabbed with a knife, and that was what happened. Tun Jana Khatib was stabbed in the heart and something miraculous happened. His body vanished into thin air. It disappeared. But the blood from his body spilled onto the ground, and the bikang cake seller, for some reason, grabbed her tudung saji, her food cover, and covered the blood, and this turned into stone. No one could explain the mysterious disappearance of Tun Jana Khatib. But according to another story, at the very same time when his body disappeared from Singapura, it reappeared, it materialized again on the coast of Langkawi, an island in the north. The people of Langkawi brought his body to be buried at a place called Makam Purba. The end. And that was the very short story of Tun Jana Khatib. Now, unlike most folk tales and fairy tales, this story has actually been recorded and written down in a book called Sulalat al-Salatin or Sejarah Melayu. At the time, Temasek, or now it's known as Singapore, was under Hindu influence. And Tun Jana Khatib, who was an ulama, a missionary, was probably there to spread the word of God. It's unclear whether he actually used his powers to split the tree or whether it just happened by accident. He may have used his powers as a way to gain access to the king. So he thought maybe if he showed the queen that he had these special powers granted to him by God, she would talk to the king and the king would let him into the palace. Unfortunately, it backfired, and instead he was sentenced to death because the Paduka Sri Maharaja thought he was flirting with the Permaisuri. I've read other versions of this story, and it tells us that the place where Tun Jana Khatib was executed is a place called Hujung Pasar, which in Malay means end of the market. There is no actual reference in the text of the Sejarah Melayu to a place called Hujung Pasar in this particular story. So this may have been added on by later storytellers and writers. There is another Sejarah Melayu story where the daughter of the Bendahara, Sang Rajunartapa, was executed for being unfaithful to the king. And the place of this execution was at the end of the market. So in the Sejarah Melayu, they say that she was executed at the end of the market. And if you translate this into Malay, it literally means Hujung Pasar. I don't know whether the actual stone, which is said to come from the blood of Tun Jana Khatib, actually exists today. Friends in Singapore, if you know, tell us. Leave a comment. I'd love to go see this stone, which came from the blood of Tun Jana Khatib, once we're able to travel again. Let me tell you a little bit about this very special book. This very short story of Tun Jana Khatib was taken from the Sejarah Melayu, known in the ancient Malay courts as Hikayat Melayu, or more correctly, Sulalat al-Salatin. The actual full name of this book is a bit of a mouthful. It is Sulalat al-Salatin, yakni Pituturan Segala Raja-Raja, or the Genealogy and Memorial of Kings. The English name for this book is the Malay Annals, but I'm not a fan of that name. So in these videos, I will be using its proper name, which is Sulalat al-Salatin or Sejarah Melayu. Now, if you're Malaysian and you went to Malaysian school, I'm sure you've heard of this book in your history class. This is where you learn about how Melaka was discovered, and all those cool stories about Hang Tuah, Hang Jebat, and Putri Gunung Ledang. But what exactly is this book and why was it written? The Sulalat al-Salatin is the only surviving text of the earliest Malay literary work to have been written about the Malays outside of Sumatra. It is regarded as the finest and most famous of all Malay classics. The main theme of this book is quite clear, and that is that the author sought to narrate through their work the fortunes and misfortunes that befell the Malay kings, the Malay Rajas of the Melaka line. It was written to provide a memorial for the rulers to remind themselves of their duties and to provide succeeding Malay generations with the history of the genealogy of the Melaka sultans, together with a chronicle of the Malay royal ceremonies. By genealogy, I mean the study of lineage or family history. This is not just my opinion. This is what's been written in this fabulous book called The Sejarah Melayu Revisited by Datuk Dr. Ahmat Adam, who is a professor in the field of history. Guys, this book looks so dull, but it is mind-blowing. I learned so much about Sejarah Melayu from this book, and it was published quite recently in 2020, so it's bang up to date. I love it. The Sejarah Melayu contains the written history of the states of the Malay archipelago. Archipelago. I can't pronounce that word. And was written at the request of Raja di Hilir, Lord of the Upper Reaches. And I quote, "We request that my Lord the Vizier to inscribe for us a genealogy of all the Malay kings and their customs, together with all the ceremonies of the palace, so that they may be made known and observed by all our descendants who come after us, and from them derive some benefit." So this book is essentially a history of the past Malay rulers and was looked upon as a sort of guide or a handbook on how to rule in the proper manner. According to Professor Muhammad Haji Salleh, this text is without a doubt the single most important literary historical text in the Malay language. It traces the history of what is now Palembang, Bentam, Aceh, Singapore or Temasek, Brunei, and Malaysia. The text is a history of the Malays of Sumatra, the Riau Archipelago, and the Malay Peninsula, and was most likely conceived while Melaka was at its height. According to Professor Muhammad Haji Salleh, reading the text, we can almost feel, and I quote, "the exuberance of a people in its flush of success and how their pride is deeply etched into its language." This quote is taken from another recent publication, which is The Genealogy of Kings, Sulalat al-Salatin, published in 2020 by Penguin. So we have two up-to-date books on the Sejarah Melayu, which is very exciting. However, if you have read Sejarah Melayu or come across its stories, you'll soon discover that this is no ordinary history book. Yes, it does list out the history of the royal family, the names and dates of its rulers. It gives accounts of palace life, battles won, marriages, etc. However, there are many mystical elements and highly romanticized stories, which do not usually belong in a history book. The story I told today falls within that category. In addition, according to Professor Muhammad Haji Salleh, this text is literary in its widest term, in the widest term of the word kesusastraan. And he says, the Malays learned not to measure all their history through written notes and documents, for they were a people who celebrated the sophisticated instruments of oral expression and its musical qualities. The sound of the language echoed throughout their literature. Thus, truth may not only be sought in the written pages, but also in the words spoken by the bards and the singers. I love that quote. This is why the Sulalat al-Salatin cannot be regarded as a true work of history. This is generally recognized to be the case by most contemporary historians, because this is a work of literature intermixed with myth, legends, fairy tales, and historical information. The narrative contained in the book is a mixture of legends, myth, and history because the author wanted it to be a book of remembrance, advice, and counsel to the Malay Rajas. Basically, this was a book of literature which was originally written with the hidden intention to remind the Malay rulers of the necessity to act with proper conduct and not to abuse their royal position. So for this video, I have used two Sejarah Melayu books, translated books, and those are Sejarah Melayu by Silverfish Malaysian Classics, which was written in 2012. This one, you can see where I marked, and the more recent translation by Penguin of the Genealogy of Kings, Sulalat al-Salatin, translated by Professor Muhammad Haji Salleh. And this is from 2020, and I quoted Professor Muhammad Haji Salleh earlier. So the Silverfish edition has remained faithful to the original in order to retain the author's voice. So this edition may sound a little bit old-fashioned. The Penguin version by Professor Muhammad Haji Salleh, this one, was written in English that is closer to the speech of the 21st century, and is therefore a bit more accessible to those of the present generation. I like both versions. I will tell you more about Sejarah Melayu in the next two videos, so if you want to learn more, please come join me. I'd like to end this video with a poem, a pantun, which tells about the mysterious disappearance of the body of Tun Jana Khatib. And the poem in Malay is this. Telur itik di Singgora, pandan terletak di Langkahi, darah titik di Singapura, badannya terlantar di Langkawi. The English translation of this pantun from the Silverfish book reads as follows. Tough is the duck of Singgora. The pandan leans on the tui tree. His blood was shed at Singapura, but his body lies at Langkawi. So what do you think of this story and of Sejarah Melayu in general? I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please do leave a comment. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please like and subscribe to my channel. Please support me in my mission to spread these stories once again. Next week, I will tell you another story from Sulalat al-Salatin, and that is the tale of the Swordfish attack on Singapore. I'll see you then.